Algebra 2, Concept 7B. We're going to graph quadratic functions in intercept form. So first let's start with some vocabulary, definitions, and formulas. So intercept form looks a little different than vertex and standard form. A quadratic function in this form is y equals a times x minus p times x minus q. Now, a value is the same as in other forms, and it functions the same way. It helps you determine whether the graph opens up or down. P and q values are the intercepts on the x-axis. And so this will be where the quadratic graph, the parabola, crosses the x-axis if it does. So x-intercepts in equation form can be the points p, 0, and q, 0 in x and y format. And so notice in the equation y equals a times x minus p times x minus q that in the formula it's in terms of subtraction. So when we pick out the p and q value, we're going to look for opposite values. So here are the steps to graph a quadratic in x-intercept form. So the first thing is to identify that it is an intercept form and then anticipate any transformations. Does it open up? Does it open down? Then you're going to find the x-intercept. So you're going to pick out the p and the q values and you'll take the opposite sign of those. You'll find the axis of symmetry, which is also the x value of the vertex, and it's just in the middle of those two x-intercepts. So you're going to add up the values, so p plus q, and then find the middle, divide it by 2. That's the equation of your axis of symmetry and the x value of the vertex. Then to find the y value of the vertex, in step 3, you're going to plug in that x value into the equation just like you've done before to find the x and the y value of the vertex. All right, let's do example 1. So you can see that the equation looks a little different than standard and intercept form. So notice that we have two x values in our equation, 1/4 times x minus 6 times x minus 2. And so it is still quadratic though, because if we multiplied those together, we would get x squared. So the first thing we're going to do is pick out our p and our q value, our x-intercepts, and remember to take the opposite sign. So p will be the first x-intercept we see, which is positive 6, and q is the second one, which is positive 2. It really doesn't matter which one you determine, call p, and which one q. Now let's write them in xy points. So that would be the point 6, 0, right on the x-axis, and then 2, 0. Now let's find the axis of symmetry, or the x value of the vertex. So we take that formula, p plus q, and we divide it by 2. So that'll give us 8 divided by 2, or 4. So the y value of the vertex, or our axis of symmetry, is 4. And now to find the y value of the vertex, we'll plug in 4. I might have said y value of the vertex, I meant x. So plugging in 4 and doing the math, we find that our y value is -1. So our vertex is 4, -1. Our axis of symmetry is x equals 4. Now let's place that vertex in the middle of our table. And then Math Excel will give you a table and ask you to do like what you've done before. So you're going to step down in the negative direction, place it above, and then in the positive direction. But make notice if any of those x values are your intercepts. And if they are, you already know the y value. You can just fill it in. So we have the point 2, 0, and 6, 0. Then take 3 and 5, or you can just start with 3 and plug it into your equation, and you'll get -0.75 or 3/4, and 5 will be the same. And that's all right to have a point in decimal form. So now draw your xy axis, label it, and then label a scale, and then carefully plot your points. Your graph should open up because your a value is positive, and it will be wider than what you're used to because that a value is less than 1. Go ahead and sketch in your axis of symmetry right through the middle of that parabola where x equals 4. Now our domain, again, will be all real numbers, and then our range, since our graph opens up, will be all the y values that are greater than and equal to -1. And since it is opening up, we have a low point, and so we have a minimum. Let's try example 2. So first of all, start by picking out your p and your q values. So you look inside your parentheses and be sure to take opposite sign. So p is 1 and q is negative 3. And let's write those as x-intercept points. So that would be the point 1, 0, and then negative 3, 0. Now let's jump down and find the axis of symmetry, which is the x value of the vertex. So add p and q, which will give you negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. And now to find the y value of the vertex, plug in negative 1 into your equation for x in both locations, and then just do the math. So the y value of the vertex will be 8. So we have the vertex negative 1, 8. Place that in your table, and then step in the negative direction, and just be aware if you see any x values that are your x-intercepts, and then you can just fill in the y value of 0. Now take negative 2 and plug it into your equation for x, and then if we do the math, we'll get positive 6 for both where x equals negative 2 and 0. Sketch your xy axis, label it, and then label a scale. Notice that I always have you do that, so every time you'll graph on your own, you will do that. Carefully plot your points. Notice this is opening down because our a value is negative, and then just sketch in that axis of symmetry. So our domain, again, will be all real numbers. Our range, since our parabola is opening down, will be all the y values that are less than or equal to 8. And then since that is opening downward, we have a maximum point. All right, now it's time for the independent practice. So you're going to pause the video, do those problems on your own, and then come back to the video to check your work. All right, welcome back. For this graph, you should have found that your p and your q values are 5 and 1. So your x-intercepts are 5, 0, and 1, 0. So finding that axis of symmetry, adding up your p and q and dividing by 2, you find that x equals 3. When you plug that into your equation, you'll find that y equals negative 8. So I have my vertex of 3, negative 8, and then I fill in my table, noticing that 2 of my values are my x-intercepts. So I plug in 0 for y. And then I just plug in 2 and 4 into my equation for x to find the y values. Carefully plot your points, and you should have found that the graph opens up. It's pretty narrow because of that a value of 2, and then sketch in that axis of symmetry. Since our graph is opening up, we will have a minimum point, and our range will be y is greater than or equal to negative 8. All right, number 2 is a little different. And so this is very important for you to know for your unit exam. I'm going to rewrite this equation, putting in that second set of parentheses that we're used to seeing. So it will be f of x equals, I leave the negative out front, and then I put in x minus 0. So I have placed in a 0. Now you should be able to easily see what your p and your q values are, 0 and positive 6. So our x-intercepts will be at 0, 0, and 6, 0. So finding that axis of symmetry, which is the x value of the vertex, p plus q divided by 2, which is 3. So our axis of symmetry is 3. Now let's plug that into our equation. So we get negative 3 times 3 minus 6, which will give us positive 9. So our vertex point is 3, 9. Now, if you look at my table that's filling in, I went ahead and put my 3, 9, one space below because I wanted to go ahead and put in x values until I got to my x and y intercept. And then I plugged in my other points into my equation. This graph is going to open down, and so this time I have 7 points to graph. Sketch in your axis of symmetry. Identify the domain and range. So our domain will once again be all real numbers. Our range, since our graph's opening downward, is y is less than or equal to 9. So we have a maximum. So again, just to know for your unit exam that this equation, when you have it in the form where you don't see a first set of parentheses, it's been simplified. So that means that I can hold this negative out, that our p value technically is 0. All right, this concludes the notes for 7B. There is one more video that you need to watch to take and fill out a table before you go and do the teacher talk with the teacher.